Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's session on empowering parents of young children as advocates and leaders to impact systems change. My name is Midra Surratt. I'm the Executive Director of Parent Information Center of Delaware, and I'm joined by Mai Hall from the Parents Place of Maryland and Adriana Fontaine from the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center. And we'll be presenting to you ways that we've incorporated and aligned activities with our Part C systems through partnerships to support families. Parents of infants and toddlers in the Part C system are just beginning their journey advocating for a child and family as they navigate the early intervention and other systems. Parent centers, staffed by parents with lived experience, have the knowledge and understanding that parents of young children need to gain knowledge, skills, and confidence to fulfill their critical roles at the individual, program, and systemic levels. Today, we will share how we've collaborated with our Part C lead agencies aimed at giving parents of infants and toddlers this essential training and support. Because each of us also serve as our state RP ambassador through the Division of Early Childhood, we will also share how we've incorporated information about the practices in our existing work for families. So a little bit about the Parent Information Center of Delaware. We are the State Parent Training and Information Center for the state of Delaware, as well as the Family to Family. We also participate in a number of stakeholder groups representing the needs of children with disabilities and their families, which include the State Systemic Improvement Plan for both our Part C and Part B systems. We also have a very a great relationship with our Part C and Part B programs, which has really been instrumental in a lot of the work that we've been able to do in our state. And as mentioned before, I am the RP ambassador, the representative for the state of Delaware. And so initially, when we were looking at the early intervention and incorporating early intervention into our existing programs, we looked at three key areas: systems advocacy, our technical assistance to families and professionals, and then our social media and outreach, and how we can incorporate early intervention across those programs. And so when we're talking about looking at our existing programs, the first thing we did is we did an assessment of all of our programs. So we looked intentionally at our technical assistance, our one-on-one assistance to families, our trainings. We identified areas of overlap where we can consolidate some resources. That also gave us an opportunity to identify new activities and professional development opportunities for families and communication tools to develop as well. But initially looking at this process, it's a bit of a puzzle. And so it's a process in trying to figure out how do we put all of these, how can we connect all of these activities so to our families it's seamless, and it also doesn't overburden the center as well. And sometimes that can be a bit of a challenge to do. As it relates to technical assistance, we recognized that we needed dedicated staff trained in early intervention. That staff, we also needed staff representation on stakeholder groups, including the Interagency Collaborative Council, which currently we have 2 members serving on that council. We also partnered, as I mentioned earlier, we partnered with our Part C lead agency, and we now have a monthly newsletter that focuses on early intervention that goes out to families monthly. In addition to that, as part of our work, we are able to provide professional development trainings and partner to identify what additional communication tools are needed for families. Our role in the ICC, as well as in our stakeholder groups, such as the ESIP, have been really critical to allowing us to identify the needs of families, and also as a parent center, the role of the parent center serving as the vehicle to bring that information back to the stakeholder groups as decisions are being made that impact children with disabilities and their families. And prior to COVID, we had a strong social media and outreach in our methods of engaging families, but as a result of the pandemic, we really relied on our social media outreach to engage with families. And so when we looked at early intervention, we incorporated early intervention topics and the DEC recommended practices into our existing social media schedule. We also shared information from our Part C and early intervention program on our organization's page. The one thing about the DEC recommended practices is that there's a lot of information that can be shared to your social media page. So it prevents you from reinventing the wheel, what have you. They have practice guides with vignettes and videos that break down each specific practice with examples for families. And that was very easy for us. That allowed us to embed that into our existing social media structure to share with families. I also mentioned earlier, we have our early childhood or early intervention newsletter. And so this was another way to incorporate a DEC recommended practice into each newsletter, each monthly newsletter. What's also important, I just wanted to add as it relates to social media and engagement, is you want to make sure that the information is provided in small tidbits. And so I just wanted to take a quick minute just to identify this is an example of one of the visuals that we use for our social media, one of our social media tools. When posting on social media, you want to make sure that you use a picture that can engage and keep your text to a minimum. Consider posting information at the same time daily. You also want to have someone in-house, if that's you yourself or someone else that understands social media analytics and can identify and can look at the analytics to determine, is this the best time of day that we've selected? Are we engaging with families? What's the response that we're receiving from families? It's not always necessarily going to be reflective in the comments. That data is going to also show you how often your posts are being shared, that information is being shared amongst families and other stakeholders. We also utilize Facebook Live as a tool to share information as it relates to early intervention. And so part of our social media schedule and our training schedule was to incorporate Facebook Live trainings once a week on a specific early intervention or early childhood topic. And again, going back to the DEC recommended practices, this was a great opportunity to share content that's already been vetted, it's already been reviewed, and it can be easily accessed and shared with your families. And if, as an RP ambassador, part of our training allows us to access this. And so we receive training on the DEC recommended practices. We share communication tools such as what I'm showing you here. So it's really been a benefit and a great way to embed all of those different resources into our existing Parent Center program. And so when we're talking about early intervention and systems advocacy, as I mentioned earlier, we are represented on our state systemic improvement plans, both the leadership and professional development subcommittees. We represent the needs of children with disabilities and their families at ICC meetings and assist the council with recruitment. Some additional ways that we have supported our state systemic improvement plan is we share that information with families. We incorporate any updates, ICC updates, upcoming meetings, recruitment for families in our early intervention newsletter. We share these resources on our website and on our social media pages. And most recently, we've partnered with our professional development subcommittee to identify trainings for professionals. And the DEC this has been a great way to incorporate the DEC recommended practices into this work because a lot of the professional development and the tools and resources have already been created through the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center. And so this is just an example of some of the communication tools that we've shared. On the left-hand side is the early intervention newsletter that we send out, and it might be a little difficult to see, I apologize, but it does include information about early intervention. And then here on the right-hand side, this is where we incorporate the DEC recommended practices in each of our our early intervention newsletters. And so we'll also have terminology to know, and then a specific practice, and we break down what that practice is. And it's all aligned with our social media schedule, any trainings that we have that week. So when families access this information, they're receiving the information on a repetitive basis, but it's in small chunks. So we're not giving families too much information at one time. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mai, who's going to share the wonderful work that they're doing at the Parents' Place of Maryland.
Great, thank you so much, Midra. So I'm here to talk about the Parents' Place of Maryland. And a really quick overview of what the Parents' Place of Maryland does is we are Maryland's Parent Training Information Center. We are the PTI for the state, and we help families to better understand their children's disabilities, education, special health care needs. We really hone in on communicating more effectively with schools. So we empower and encourage our parents to really work together with their child's school systems so that we can just create better outcomes for both parent and child. We help resolve disagreements with the school or other agencies. And as always, we do make a lot of referrals to community resources and grassroots organizations to help families connect with what they need. Next slide. So what did we do with these Division of Early Childhood recommended practices? Because we do sit on several, just like Midra said, it's really important for PTIs to get on their SSIPs, their SICCs, the state improvement, the state interagency collaborating councils. It's really important for the PTIs to have a voice at the table because we represent that parent voice. We hear from parents all across the state, and what better way to get parent engagement into the right people making those decisions than to be seated at the table. And the more we work with our school systems, the more we found out that, hey, Maryland State Department of Education really does want certain programs to reach out to their early intervention services. So we applied for a grant with the Maryland State Department of Education, and we were awarded to do a pilot program called Baby Leaders, Beginning the Journey. And Baby Leaders really quickly just focuses in on training parents of children ages birth up to age 5 on various topics, starting from early intervention, transition from Part C to Part B. We do a lot of special education law, dispute resolution, how to communicate with your IEP teams or IFSP teams. And then we really take a lot of time on leadership and advocacy and what that looks like, because it is our intention that these parents then turn around to their communities and get involved in serving on groups, getting involved in their local PTAs, their local CCACs, their special education citizens advisory committees. They can even be that parent member on their state's SICC. So we really hone in on that leadership development to empower our parents to be the leaders sitting at the table, again, to represent parent voice. So part of this beginning the journey, we can go back to the other slide, still talking about it. Part of that beginning the journey requires 2 slides ahead of time. Yeah, that one. Yep. So we did 5 sessions of 2-hour-long training workshops. With COVID, we had to really do this virtually. So we extended the amount of time we talked to parents and had to rethink, how do we introduce these recommended practices to parents? In the past, we would do, as a former teacher, we do a lot of hands-on activities. So in person, we would do chart paper, large group discussions, elevator speeches. We would have them meet in small groups and brainstorm ideas on how to do these recommended practices with their providers. We had to rethink this whole process during COVID and doing this training virtually. So we did breakout rooms. We had homework. Yes, I assigned parents homework for a training session. I know, right? But that was the only way we were going to get this done. So I think, we can go to the next slide. So as part of that hands-on activity in our breakout rooms, using the chat box, we would show our parents these family practice guides. We focused on the family practice guides because we were working with families and parents and caregivers. So before we even showed parents these family practice guides, we would ask them, hey, what are some fun games and activities you play with your 2-year-old, with your infant, with your preschool child? What are some things you do in your family that promote spending time together? What are some things you do outside of your home? Do you go to the zoo, the park, public library? And as they're chatting and talking amongst themselves about all the things they're doing, we're recording those responses. And we, the facilitators at Parent Place of Maryland, we are organizing those thoughts and ideas and sticking them in certain family practice guides. Things like the family topic, the interaction topic, the teaming and collaboration topic, because we're, us facilitators being responsible for promoting this knowledge, we really wanted to first acknowledge what parents are already doing. Like any parent-child interaction training program, we always begin by asking parents what they do already, to acknowledge their strengths, to empower them to be their child's first teacher. When we ask parents what they do right off the bat, it lets parents know that, hey, these guys value what I already do. You know what? I'm already doing some of these with my kid. We're validating them. So when they see these papers and they're not that overwhelmed by, oh my God, I got to read all this information. No, parent, you're already doing, look at this bullet, this bullet, this bullet. You're already doing some of these things. So good job. We're just giving them the vocabulary and the terminology to use with what they're already doing. The RPs are a way to define parent-led activities to give them meaning. This allows for further conversations about parent training, parent-child learning opportunities. So this is just one way, one example of a way we did virtually with the chat box using whole group strategies and whole group discussion. Next slide. Part of the homework was to read a practice guide for a family. So then once they were introduced to these family practice guides, part of their homework for the night was to read through their topic. So because I knew who my registrants were for my parent cohort, I knew what ages their children were, what disabilities they had, and whether or not they went through Part C to Part B, or just Part C, or just started with Part B. So me and my facilitator were able to tell them, hey, look at this one topic, read through the 3 to 5 family practice guides within that topic, choose one that resonates with you. Choose the one that you're probably already doing or that you want to learn more about. So as homework, I assigned each parent a topic. They chose which guides to look at. It was okay if the guides were repeated. It was more important that the parents felt comfortable with using that tool that they chose. But they needed to start somewhere, which is why I chose the topic for them based on the age of their child. For example, a transition-aged child, their parent got the transition topic, while an infant parent received a topic on family or environment. Then when we came back to talk about the RPs during a networking session, the whole group got to share out about 1 to 2 minutes each about what resonated within that topic. They got to talk about, hey, you know, my infant already does this, and here's some other things. They gave more information about what that family practice guide gave them. They encouraged parents to do these fun games and activities that they were doing. So they were sharing what was important to them. The whole group share out was only made possible by the virtual nature of the training. So each person got a chance to talk. Some of them really got creative, as said in this bullet point. Some of them had their infant with them, so they got to show us. One of them had a really neat way of playing hide and seek. They used different materials and had baby girl grab the material to pull it off of mommy's face. So it focused in a little bit about the fine motor processes that infants were doing. So that was really creative. So some of them, used their preschoolers or used their infants to show us how they did the family practice guide at home, which of course, seeing little babies, who can resist that, right? So that network activity where parents got to share out was really, really fun and engaging for all the parents. And then of course, they had to reflect on using these guides as part of that night's homework. So we did a lot of reflection, of summative assessments on the way. It was easy for the parents to interact this way because, again, we started off by acknowledging what they did first. So they felt very comfortable using these practice guide tools in a training session. That's just one way we did a training session. There are many other ways, but I hope this gives you an idea of how to use the RPs in a parent training workshop. For more information, you can contact our executive director, Ms. Renee Avritson-Zoni at renee@ppmd.org. Again, my name is Mai Hall, and I am the early childhood specialist with the Parents Place in Maryland.
Thanks, Mai. And we're now going to turn it over to Adriana.
Hello and welcome. My name is Adriana Fontaine. I am a bilingual parent consultant and early childhood support programs manager for the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center. I'm also the RP ambassador to Connecticut. Today, I will be showing you a few examples of how at CPAC we're integrating the DEC recommended practices in our daily work, trainings, and programs. Parent training information centers are a great resource for families. Our center's mission is to educate, support, and empower families of children and youth with any disability or chronic conditions ages birth through to 26 and the professionals who serve them. Empowerment and advocacy start early on, from the moment that they learn the child has a developmental delay. For this reason, we have 2 support programs for families of young children with developmental delays ages 0 to 5. The Family Connections Program and the Preschool Pathfinder Program. Parent training information centers provide families reliable tools and information that helps them solve an issue they consider important. In early intervention and early childhood special education, it can be the lack of understanding of early intervention coaching model and the role in early intervention, or informational needs regarding transition procedures to preschool special education. One thing is for sure, the services and information that PTIs provide to families and professionals is relevant, of high quality, and must be useful to the families we serve. Ultimately, we are helping them to become their child's best advocate so they can fully participate in decision-making process during early intervention and beyond. The recommended practices are a clear example of high-quality, research-based practices that promote child's development and parent engagement. The recommended practices are relevant for problem solving. We can use them over time in many formats, and they are designed to reach diverse audiences as they're available in Spanish. Therefore, we need to think critically how to use them in our work and how to develop creative ways to integrate them in our curriculum, programs, and technical assistance calls. One example that comes to mind as to how I use the recommended practices in a technical assistant call is a call that I had with a parent, and I was able to help her discern what information was relevant to share with their child's team. The parent shared to me that she was unsure if the amount of tantrums her child was having was something relevant that she needed to share with her team. She felt that it was perhaps an issue of discipline on her side. She noted that the other children she had issues and some behavioral concern, but they did not last. So she felt that it was not a concern, even though her child was having 9 to 10 behaviors and tantrums during the day, and they seemed to get longer as time passed. For this specifically technical assistance call, I used family member roles in informed clinical reasoning to illustrate to her the importance of sharing unusual behaviors and challenges across settings. I encouraged her to observe when the tantrums happen and to make a list of those behaviors. She communicated with her team, and the team agreed that the behaviors were concerning, and they moved forward with a functional behavioral assessment. Another important aspect that I want to highlight in the recommended practices is that it reaches diverse segments of target audiences that we serve in a very culturally competent manner. The recommended practices are available in Spanish, and half the families we support are monolingual. Families can connect with the songs, with the cultural aspect of the guides in a positive manner. And this was clearly noted in our training series called Next Steps. Next Steps in Spanish is one of the most comprehensive trainings that we have at CPAC, and it talks about special education and related topics. It's a total of 8 sessions, and topics include effective communication, child find, developing the IEP, and transition. In the last series, we decided to do a pilot and include a session on early intervention. We created a curriculum, and when we do this, we try to match our learning objectives with evidence and reliable data. Our learning objectives for this session was to focus on Connecticut's birth to 3 system and how services are delivered. The recommended practices were very helpful in explaining Connecticut's birth to 3 system's main practices, especially naturally environment practices, coaching as a style of interaction with families and team members, and primary service provider approach to teaming. The guides that we used particularly were naturally occurring child learning practice and child learning comes naturally. We use them because it gives specific examples of how the child learns in everyday activities, and it provides tips to parents to observe how they interact with the environment as well as with others. We included videos to illustrate these examples. In addition, we also shared the DEC resources available for download and provided the Early Childhood Technical Assistance website for resources and how to access the recommended practices on their websites. As a result, results from our survey indicated that even though 55% of the participants had no idea about the recommended guides, 84% strongly agreed that the videos and the recommended practices were very useful to understand how a naturally learning environment happens in young children and that they were planning on using them. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how we're integrating the practice guides for families in our programs. Our center is committed to empowering families by ensuring meaningful and equitable access to its services, programs, and activities in the family's spoken language, including families enrolled in our Preschool Pathfinder program, which serves monolingual speaking families. This program was developed a couple of years ago with the assistance of the Connecticut State Department of Education. Its main goal is to provide direct support to families facing challenges navigating transition process from birth to 3 to public school or entering special education pre-K through child find process. Other objectives include engaging families in collaborative practices that will result in increased confidence at planning and placement team meetings, as well as understanding the main components of IDEA and understanding the difference in delivery models from Part C to Part B through coaching sessions. We review records such as evaluation reports with the family and conduct a needs assessment to determine the child's needs and how services will look like for the child in preschool. We also provide support during planning and placement team meetings. This process is parent-driven, and if the family has informational gaps as to how the transition takes place or what special education is, we need to fill in those gaps with reliable information. This is the case with monolingual families. The way that special education works in their countries is different than in the US, where special education is more of a placement rather than a program. And in most cases, a very restricted placement, and they may fear that their children may be isolated in a placement. And in some cases, these families are reluctant to accept special education services for those reasons. One of the recommended practices that I had frequently used with monolingual Spanish-speaking families is the family practice guide on transition called Your Child's Move from Early Intervention to Preschool Special Education. This guide promotes parent participation in the transition process. It provides tips to ask questions to school staff about how services in pre-K differ from early intervention. It also helps parents to understand the new environment and observe the pre-K setting. It also talks about inclusion, and it highlights the importance of connecting with other parents who have gone through transition and who have been there and understand the challenges. We usually go over the recommended practices to formulate specific questions for their team. For example, some of the questions that we might ask: how will the school district decide if my child is eligible for special education? What kind of testing will be needed? And who can I call if I have questions? The second guide that we use in our program is the Transition from Early Intervention to Preschool Special Education Services Guide, available in the Practitioner Guide section. I feel this guide is very useful, and even though it seems to be written for professionals, families can see what needs to be happening before the transition takes place. So it's like a planning transition tool. For instance, that transition conversations need to happen early on, and in our state, it could be 6 to 9 months before the child turns 3. Ongoing communication with the school about preschool special education services, and it also talks about parents' rights. It encourages parents to make a list of questions for the school staff, family rights. For instance, knowing that you can bring someone knowledgeable about your child to the transition conference meeting or the planning and placement team meetings. And finally, our Family Connections program. Our Family Connections program was developed in partnership with our Birth to 3 system, with the ultimate goal of increasing the percentage of parents who understand Connecticut Birth to 3 system service model and understand the role in early intervention, and to increase the percentage of parents who report to feel more confident in their ability to describe their child's needs. The Family Connections program is divided in 3 tiers. Tier 1 is universal supports, and it follows an interactive approach. In this stage, parents and caregivers can request a short-term parent mentor. They can also receive support via Facebook group. They can access our bi-monthly newsletter. They can access our First Steps training, and they can receive also phone consultation with one of our parent consultants. The Tier 2 sustained supports follows a one-to-one phone consultation with a Family Connections staff consultant, which is also a family. It's an experienced family who has been through Birth to 3 and understands the process. And the tier 3 is targeted supports, and mentor support is available in this tier, as well as phone technical assistance and attendance to Birth to 3 transition conference. Throughout these 3 tiers of support in our program, we're constantly implementing the recommended practices. We included in our social media posts, in our bi-monthly early childhood newsletter, and we actually are able to text the guides to parents as needed. So these are some of the examples that at the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center we have been able to implement for the DEC recommended practices. And I hope that you have found this information helpful. Thank you very much and have a nice day.